It's all tied up. The tap back in. Could be a game winner on the line. How clever was that?
I did say it was one of the best spoil I've ever seen. To him in the change room as you fall.
My face currently feels like I've been run through by Tom Stewart.
Reebok runs in, touched up the boot. He came up behind him like a librarian. Puts it to the top of the square. Oh, beautiful little fist in there by Dale. Crucial centimetre moments.
He's going to come back. Hear the scream.
He definitely has a bit of the Belcho spirit. As I have a bit of the Belcho spirit.
All respect to all the defenders out there. It's not an easy job and it's an unheralded job, but they do a bloody good job. So, well done.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Kane Cornes' favourite podcast. This is The Back Pocket, the one podcast that actually took time off over the football season break and didn't try to keep pumping out football-related content when there was absolutely nothing to talk about. We didn't talk about Harley Reid, which is a change. I did get very sad at the AFLW finals. Alistair got very sad at the AFL men's finals. And now we're back and excited about football again. Even though last week felt weird. It felt like I got edged by the AFL. I got 4 games, nothing on Sunday.
And your team didn't play.
And my team didn't play. It felt like a weird pre-season that I didn't get to know anything about. We had one really bad game, one good game, and 2 that were just in the middle.
I'm also here.
Alistair's here. Yeah, should we jump straight into votes? We're doing a bit of a different setup this year because... frankly, the AFL has made the rounds as confusing as possible. So when there are 3 or more buys in a round, we're doing a 3-2-1 every other week, standard 5 down to 1. Makes it a bit easier, a bit fairer on the teams that don't get to play on the weeks where only 4 or 6 games get played.
Yep.
Works out.
Sounds good to me. Whoever came up with that's a genius.
Oh, just crazy genius brain.
Yeah, we can just get straight into votes. I'll just have to move Mason Cox dead shit down the list. All right, my one vote. I'll go first because you did the intro. I'm giving my one vote to, is it Blake Howes? Is his name Blake?
Blake Howes? Yeah, he was my
Melbourne.
one vote also.
Oh, sweet.
What a debut.
Yeah, it's the 12 intercept possessions for me at 82% as a key sized player. Good stuff.
Yeah, it was a really good game. I will bring his stats up here now when I find them. Because I wrote a little bit more than that for him, as I always do.
I'll put some.
Yeah, so on debut, had 17 disposals, like you said, 12 intercepts, which was insane. Won all 4 contested defensive one-on-ones he had for the game, 5 rebound 50s and 4 spoils. Great game.
Went at 82% as well.
And didn't get the Rising Star nom.
I think it's fair.
I thought Matt Roberts was too old, so that's why I thought House was going to get it.
I genuinely didn't know he was that
He
young.
was also very good. But I think House has a great chance to get one in the coming weeks if he plays like that again.
Yeah, definitely for sure, though it will be harder when, there's
More
18
teams
teams
playing.
playing.
Absolutely. Cool. All right. Who was your 2?
My 2 is Lockie Whitfield.
Right, okay. Yeah, he was a special mention for me.
Totally
He was
fair.
very, very good.
I'll just run you through his stats really quickly.
Yeah.
33 disposals, 14 marks, 24 kicks, 4 intercept possessions. He went at 80%, 570 metres gained, 10 rebound 50s and 16 pressure acts, and he cut Collingwood to shreds. I have no idea why they didn't lock him down. They have the players capable of doing it. They didn't. He ran amok, and if teams let him do that all year, GWS are going to win a lot of games.
Yeah, I agree. My 2 votes was to one of his teammates in Sam Taylor.
Totally fair.
10 intercepts, 3 of those were marks. Also 1 4 out of 4 one-on-ones, 4 spoils, 2 score involvements. But more importantly, just marshalled that back line. Collingwood were really struggling to get an air entry all day.
I think they were just struggling to get an entry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's really funny watching people talk about the expected score and how Collingwood was either won or was close, despite the fact that is only because 4 goals were kicked in the last 5 minutes when GWS took the foot off the pedal. That was a great performance from the Giants.
Smashed them all around the park.
A great comeback after, losing a very close and contentious preliminary final to them. Yeah, good stuff.
And on the other side of things, the Collingwood backline looks at sea without Nathan Murphy.
Yes, I agree. I thought Darcy Moore was good, but they weren't as solid as they were. Obviously, Cal Brown just had a field day against that Collingwood backline. They just couldn't match up on him. So
he'll do that to a couple of clubs, I think.
All right. Who was your 2?
My 2, I already did it. I'll give you my 3.
That's what I meant, yeah.
Will Powell.
Yeah, who else could it be?
No, there was no one even close.
Probably Brownlow votes. Coaches gave him 8.
Yep.
28 disposals, 11 of them were intercepts, 5 intercept marks, 4 rebounds, 555 metres gained, and 2 spoils in there, even though he was playing as a small running back. If it wasn't for Rowell going absolutely beast mode, Powell would have been best on ground.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't not get 10 coaches' votes when you have 20 clearances.
Yeah. Great game. Powell, we talked about him a lot last year. Big fans here.
Again, if he stays injury-free, that will do wonders for their backline.
I totally agree. In my special mentions was Sam Collins, who just beasted the ball out of the air every time it was there. He had 13 spoils, won 6 out of 7 one-on-ones, 7 intercepts. Had a pretty good game as well. I also, like I said, Darcy Moore was in there, but he didn't have a single contested defensive one-on-one, so unaccountable king. Doesn't help at all. The other one I had for a special mention, an actual one, was Lewis Young.
Okay.
I thought he was really good. He looked himself a few times. He had those usual moments that he has, but he had 2 intercept marks, 11 rebound 50s, 6 spoils, and was the only other player, other than the ones I've already given votes to win all 4 of his one-on-ones on the weekend. So if he can keep playing like that, it will go a long way to fill that gap in the meantime until Wigan can get back. So,
well, my special mentions, Sam Taylor was one of them. Nick Blakey, carving it up for Sydney, absolutely had to get mentioned. Darcy Wilmot, despite his disposal efficiency, was really good at halfback for Brisbane. And Nick Haynes, I thought, was also really good. GWS's backline in full was really good.
GWS and Gold Coast had the best defensive units, I think, on the weekend.
I could maybe give like a half mention to Adam Sard's second half on Charlie Cameron.
Yeah. I also thought Andrews looked good, but Carlton's Tools kicked 7 goals and won the game for them.
Yes.
So you can't really... and they also had 14 scoring involvements between them, so you can't really drop much into
I think
that.
they got most of the coaches' votes too.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
I did think that was funny, and I was going to bring that up, actually. I love the idea that if McInerney takes the ball out of the ruck at the end there and kicks a goal and Brisbane win, do Carlton still have 5 players out of the 7 in the coaches' votes? Like, I always find that like a weird... how much that would skew the votes. I think Mackay obviously was best on ground by a fair way.
Would he be best on ground with only 2 goals and no goal kicking?
Winning
goal? Match-winning goal?
Absolutely. No.
Who knows?
He was brilliant. I think that even without that last goal, he was probably best on ground. He looked really good when he was in the ruck. He created a lot of opportunities for the other forwards, and then obviously his goal kicking was on. So really enjoyed Charlie's little barb in the post-game as well.
Kane Cornes didn't.
No, I bet he didn't. Wait.
You haven't watched his video from his channel?
I didn't watch it, but I heard what he said.
Okay. 7, I don't know which show.
I think that we live in this world where in all sports media, we have to say something bad about everything.
Yeah.
You can say it's what's expected of him, but also recognise that it was good. Like, if we don't recognise that it was good, then where's the level of expectation the other way? Like, you can't have it only one way. Yes, it's what's expected of him. I also expect 13 spoils from Sam Collins most weeks, but it's still good when he does it.
Yes.
You've got to give the credit if you're also going to give the criticism. And I think a lot of football journalists don't like doing the other way.
Yeah, what's his name? Chompers.
Chompers?
Yeah, he said that footy media experts are the most precious people in the world. That's what he said in response to Kane Cornes having a go at Mackay. So I liked that.
He's not wrong. Well, the only football you're not allowed to say anything negative about is Harley Reid. Otherwise, Kerry Stokes will pull your funding.
He kicked out of the West.
You can't do it. You have to leave the state, I think.
Wait till he's 19 at least before you put him on the back page every week.
So strange. The funniest one was like, it was one day I was at a coffee shop and I saw a West and I was like, I wonder if he's there again, and I flipped it over and he wasn't. And then I realised it was the last week before the pre-season and it had the V game pull out, and I pulled it out and he was the front and centre person.
When was the last number 1 pick for West Coast?
Have they had one?
They finished bottom.
Like Nat Nui was top 3, Judd was top 3. Similar. And to be fair, Nat Nui and Judd did get a ridiculous amount of press also.
Yes.
That they couldn't escape it. But I think it's just been taken to a crazy new level with Reid, mostly because West Coast has never had this long a period of being this bad. And the West is, and always will be, an incredibly West Australian biased newspaper. West Coast especially biased newspaper. And And the poor kid's just got a lot of pressure on him. I think that if he does leave and go back to Victoria in 2 or 3 years, the West can take a lot of the blame for that. Because you often see with these kids, they don't... Look at Matt Rowell, for example. He had a great first year, struggled for a few years, and then look at what he turns out on the weekend. Like, sometimes it just takes a bit of time before they get into a groove.
Yeah, last year Matt Rowell looked a shadow.
Yeah.
And now he's got 20 clearances to his now the second most
One
ever.
of the second most ever, and the only person who's done it more was a ruckman.
I had a quick look. West Coast have had 2 number 1 picks, but I don't know if they count because it was 92 and 96.
Right, yeah.
So it was Drew Banfield and Michael Gardner.
Yeah. And Michael Gardner was a generational talent who, if he had knees, would have been one of the best rucks we've ever seen.
Their number 1 pick must have got eaten up by a priority pick.
Yeah, that
That's
would make
the only
sense.
thing I can think of. Jack Watts, priority pick for Melbourne,
Yep.
Natanui number 2. So he would have been their number 1 pick.
I can't tell if my... Oh, my mic is recording. No, we're all good. Just quietly.
That's good content.
That's fine. We can have microphone content. I don't know what else there was this week. Collingwood fans online telling everyone that it's okay they lost in a dramatic fashion like that in round 1, despite last year feeling the opposite way. I think most of the off-season content has been someone says something about Collingwood, internet goes crazy because someone said something about Collingwood. That's been most of what I've seen.
I have taken a long break.
Yeah.
I've been out of football content altogether, and it's been great.
Best
I
way
feel
to
pretty
be,
refreshed,
I think,
to be honest.
from what it's been like. Cricket was much more interesting than I think recent years have been, so I've been able to pay attention to that instead of footy, which
I've
has been
watched a
great,
fair
which is
bit of
over as of
cricket.
today. I don't think Australia play another Test match until November, so rip cricket, just in
Yeah.
time for footy.
RIP. That's fine by
Worked
me.
perfectly for me. Geelong didn't play a game yet. Cricket's over. Geelong starts next week.
Well, there you go.
I think it was the earliest, as they were saying, even earlier than the year the Olympics was in Australia, this season started. That year they moved the whole season a month forward, but now that we've got gather round, the pre-finals bye,
What are they going to do with the Olympics?
3 week split round in the middle of the season, it won't be as big of a deal because it's in Brisbane, not Melbourne.
True.
Like when it was, or Sydney. Like it's not,
Just have Brisbane, Gold Coast play 2 away games.
yeah.
Fair
Or
enough.
just play at Carrara or whatever. Because Brisbane weren't even meant to be playing games at the Gabba now. Like
No.
the original plan was that they were going to be somewhere else. I remember coming into last season and round 2 was at the Gabba and when the lights went out. And I was like, wasn't it meant to be gone? Like, wasn't that the...
I think their plan was halfway through the season, and then they were like,
Yeah.
hold on a minute, Brisbane are actually good. Maybe we shouldn't demolish the Gabba just yet.
Yeah, so I don't know what
That's
they're
what
doing
I
with
think.
it.
That's my conspiracy.
I think it means there's going to be cricket there again next year. I don't know what's going on. The Olympics, like we see it costs more and more money for countries to host it every time. I think it's becoming one that countries almost don't want to host rather than do. Melbourne threw away the Commonwealth Games. They didn't want it anymore. Gold Coast meant to have the next one. So I don't know how they're going to do it. Olympics and a Commonwealth Games. Use the same village,
stadiums,
maybe?
yeah.
That'll probably help. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if it does affect, if Brisbane and Gold Coast especially are both playing finals, what would you do? Like, do you have to move the season forward again? It'll be interesting to see how the AFL does it.
I doubt it. Playing games in the summer heat, we had 4 days of 45 degrees here. Players would die.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get off the weather.
Yeah.
Let's talk about predictions for the season.
Yes, okay. Let's go for personal predictions for the podcast. Scarlett Silvani medal.
Oh, who do I think is going to win
Yeah.
that? Sam Taylor, probably.
Yeah, I was probably going to say Sam Taylor.
Yeah.
So Taylor or Sicily.
I think... who would be a sneaky win? I'd like to see like a Liam Jones, someone in their early
Sam de
early
Koning.
30s.
I'd like to see
You would
have a
like to see
breakout
that, wouldn't
season.
you?
That'd be nice. Jack Buckley,
That's a good one.
I could take.
He'll go under the radar,
Yeah.
I reckon.
What about, I guess, small backs?
Or Will Powell's off
Blake
to the
Howes.
start.
Blake Howes to come out and just win it in his first year.
I like to see Zach Williams
That'd be dope.
have an
That'd
All-Australian
be dope.
season. That'd be nice.
That'd be nice. So, I mean, he's got a huge role now with Doherty out.
Definitely.
If he can stay fit, that spot is just his.
Yep.
So that's a really good part of it. He was really good.
They've got kids to rotate through if there's resting needed, so...
I think it was better to see the last couple of times we've seen him come back, he's just exploded and been almost 100%, and then within a couple he's got injured. I think it was good to see him just play a solid game.
Yeah.
His kicking was something that Carlton had sorely missed.
Oh.
His disposal was absolutely elite.
Those low bullets.
Whereas his game was just solid. He just played a really good running back game. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely good to see him back. All right. Premier prediction.
Premier prediction?
It'll be boring. We're going to say the same thing.
Well, I was going to say GWS.
I was gonna say
yeah.
GWS.
Okay, well, that's just, yeah. They were so close last year.
They're out and firing too. They're hungry.
Yeah, you could see on the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you saw that stat where someone was saying 2022 Geelong win premiership, Collingwood lose prelim to Geelong by 1 point.
Oh, okay.
So Collingwood lose prelim, they lost it to Sydney, by 1 point.
Yeah.
Collingwood got win against the Premier the next year in round 1 by 5 odd goals. Collingwood win the premiership. This year, GWS lose the prelim by 1 point. Play Collingwood in round 1.
Well, I didn't know that stat. I want to change my answer now to a team that isn't
GWS.
destined to win it.
I mean, Sydney have to be a shout. They had a really good finish to the season last year. Once they get their full list back, if they get their full list back.
I do worry about their tall defensive stocks. I don't know about Fox and Melican as premiership defenders. But I definitely think there's a shout. I mean, last year I think I had Brisbane from the get-go and they went close. So they went as close as you can get.
Yeah, really, as close as you can get. They were very good. I still just don't quite, especially with Coleman down, I think that's a huge loss for them. I think Brisbane, they have to get that run like they did last year going in. I think Melbourne proved to me yesterday why I doubted them so much. This weekend. They looked very shaky. I watched the preseason, we talked about it. They looked like they'd fixed everything. They were entering 50 with speed and kicking it low, and then as soon as they came up in a full game, there were just high bombs inside 50, and they've got no forward line. They've got Josh Shackey up there, who, he tries his hardest, but he's not the key forward you need to win a flag
and
with.
Van Rooyen's very talented, but I don't think he's number one.
No, and they need a genuine key forward up there. The fact that Collingwood did it last year was amazing without one.
Yeah.
But they had
like the Jack Rewalt
But they
thing.
had Elliott, Myercheck, and
Darcy Cameron.
No, I'm trying to think of Bobby Hill, like all kicking reasonable amounts of goals, which makes a huge difference. Whereas Melbourne don't have that. They've got Pickett who kicks a reasonable amount, Fritsch who kicks their most, but they just don't have a proper target
and
forward.
Fritsch, depending on the day, seems to
could
be...
kick 1-5 at the moment, apparently.
It's caught him. All right, Spoon.
Spoon, West Coast.
West Coast.
It's hard to see them not doing it.
There's like a part of me that says,
Isn't
it could be Hawthorn with their injuries.
They're going to be rough their first 6 weeks, but I think once they get some players back, they'll be a bit more like last year and they'll surprise a few teams. They're clearly a well-drilled club. They've got some exciting talent, but
it'll be interesting because if they can pull it over Essendon round 1, I'll be much happy to move them out of Spoon consideration and slip Essendon.
I really enjoyed seeing that message from our non-football following mate who's going off of like football from 2016. He was like, "Oh, Hawthorn will smash Essendon," and I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, I've had 2 people mention that to me.
It has to be West Coast. They've copped injuries again. Like they just can't take a break. Is it lap lane? Like is it the facilities they're training on?
I think it's the type of player they.
Yeah,
draft.
that doesn't help, and they do still have so many players in their late 20s and early 30s who are injury prone.
Yeah.
It's a shame. Like I don't, even though it's West Coast, I don't like seeing a team crap for that long, and it's just for the rest of the competition. You don't want an uncompetitive side,
especially if you're like, oh, what's our travel game for the year? Oh, we're going to WA to play West Coast.
Yeah,
nice,
sweet. Yeah,
not
tick
a
a
problem.
box.
You take that over Port in Adelaide, in Adelaide, or Brisbane in Brisbane.
Even Freo in Perth troubled some teams who were decent last year. It's a worry, but
so Brownlow.
That's the one. It's always tough, isn't it? You have no idea. Brownlow pick.
If we pick the same one, I'm going to laugh.
That would be really funny. I was trying to think about it today. Tom Green's me. Were you going to say Tom Green?
I've got it written right
Oh,
here.
you're kidding me. That's so funny. We didn't discuss this at all prior, by the way. I was actually preparing mentally to do the podcast tomorrow. So the fact that we're doing it today means that we haven't discussed this at all. Got a message like midday. Do you want to do it today? Yeah.
I sent that message at midnight.
I read it at midday.
I've written Tom Green because...
Errol Gordon has to be a shout. He had a brilliant year last year and second year's always good.
He's has to be number 1 in that midfield this year, so a lot of pressure on him. I definitely think, obviously, Nick Dacos is in contention. He had a great game the other night. He won't get the 3, but...
He was so good again.
So those
so
3...
they need 80 disposals between the Dacos brothers to win? Is that the...
Yeah.
Like they were both within the best 5 players on the ground, and they couldn't drag them to...
I think they had almost
55
70,
points with 10 minutes to go.
70 disposals between them at that
ridiculous.
point. So those 3, I think, are the contenders. There's always smokies.
Oh, and you'll see a player, Errol Gordon last year, flying from nowhere.
And we're counting out Butters at the moment because he's injured, but Hinkley says he'll be there round 1 ready to go.
Rosie's another player that could just have a year...
stealing from each other. It's the Melbourne thing, right?
Wrong.
Oliver and
and
Brayshaw.
Yeah. Christian
Coleman.
Salem to win it from the Sky.
That's not happening. Not after round one.
What was your last one?
Coleman.
Coleman?
We will pick the same here, but only because I've got 3 players listed down.
Right, okay, yeah. Look, I think it's really tough for the Coleman this year. I think if Jeremy Cameron stays fit for the whole year again, he's got to be in the
Definitely a shot.
conversation. I think that Charlie Curnow is just an almost unstoppable force up forward.
My problem with that is I feel like just based off pre-season and round 0 alone, they seem to be evening out.
Yes.
Whereas before you would definitely see it favoured to 1. So potentially that run of 3 Carlton Colemans might be over.
Yeah. I think Nick Larkey.
That's the number 1 I've got written down.
I think they've got a much better midfield this year than last year, and he was the number 2 targeted player in the comp. They don't have another target yet, really, so...
I've written down Ben King as well.
Yes, he looked really, really good.
And I've written down Mitch Lewis, if he stays fit.
Yeah, I can see that. Mitch Lewis is one of those ones, when we were doing those blind stats last year, we were seeing... I can't remember who was posting them on Twitter, but...
Some dickhead.
He was one of those players where you'd look at his stats next to some of the best players in the comp, and he'd be like, he's good. When he's fit, he's good.
Yeah. So, I would not count him out.
Tom Lynch.
I wrote down
is always
Ugle-Hagan, and then I scratched it out. I'm like, too early.
Too early. Tom Lynch, if he is fit next week and plays the whole season, now especially when he is going to be the man in that forward line.
I don't know if Richmond have the midfield to do it.
Yeah, they looked really at sea.
Yeah.
Against Gold Coast.
And Gold Coast midfield is much younger.
Like it was definitely a case of typical Gold Coast wobbles and Richmond having that like rusted on experience that got them back in the game. Gold Coast were for 3 quarters.
The kind of thing you get from playing Camden McIntosh.
Gold Coast were the better team for 3 quarters of that game by a stretch.
Yeah.
That first half was incredible. I could not believe. Like I was confidently tipping them, but I couldn't believe the way it panned out.
Yeah, it was comical. But you could say the same thing about that Carlton game. Look how that one ended up. So
yeah, absolutely.
Weird start to the
season. It was a weird start to the season. Like all 3 games had one team get out to a big lead and get pegged. Well, except for the Jitterworth Collingwood one. Those 3 games had a team get out to a big lead and then get pegged right back.
Yeah.
And then Sydney ran away again. Obviously, Carlton got over them and then Gold Coast ran away again. But it was free-flowing footy outside of the first half of the first game. Most of it was pretty enjoyable to watch. I think daytime footy helps with that as well, which we've talked about before. But I outside of that first game, I really enjoyed footy. But when I sat down on the couch and that first game starts and it's like half-time...
I gave up.
I was like, why am I watching this?
That first game, I didn't make it all the way through. I watched all of the others, though.
Maybe that was what made me really sick that night. Maybe trying to watch Sydney-Melbourne just absolutely monstering the ball around the ground. Watching those balls just going between the 50s.
Like that Richmond member who threw up on himself.
I saw that again on Twitter the other day, so I'll post it after that game. Also, Brisbane fans, I need you to get more melty. I was really upset. I think most other teams, especially teams that were top 8 last year, most other teams would have had a proper online meltdown about that game. And all I saw was like vague disappointment and like we had our chances to put them away and we're a better team than this. You lost your first game at home for 2 years. You were 7 goals up. No melt. 8 goals up.
It's too humid to get angry on them.
Yeah, in fairness, judged by that heat. Same as in Sydney. You couldn't get angry over there. It's just too hot.
No.
You get angry and have a lie down.
That's what I do.
Yeah. It's the way to be.
All right, what do you reckon the game of round 1 will be?
All right, I haven't looked at the games. Geelong have St Kilda, which last year St Kilda bounced Geelong, but they also were packing it in by that point of the season as well. Richmond Carlton, I don't see Richmond after last week. I mean, you never know. It is Richmond Carlton. Those games serve up some weird stuff, but after last week, I'm worried Curnow's going to kick 11. Richmond's backline looks very shaky. They have to have Bolter back there. I think you have to sacrifice having no forward target to actually have a backman.
Well, I mean, Lynch should hopefully be back this week for them, so that will help them. I'm just going to say mine because you're going to take 20 minutes Googling. Collingwood Sydney is number 1 for me.
Yep. And the
Collingwood have to come out with a fire. Sydney need to prove they can win at the MCG. Gold Coast Adelaide's my other one.
Gold Coast Adelaide, sneaky good game.
Yeah. So Gold Coast winning 2 in a row, fantastic, would be huge for their season. Adelaide losing away from home again would be a horrible start to the season.
Yeah, and then the obviously extra source of the fact that Gold Coast were the only team Adelaide beat outside of Adelaide last year.
Yep.
They obviously got so close to Collingwood at the MCG. They got very close to a few teams, but it was the only game they won outside of Adelaide.
And we should see...
Essendon and Hawthorn's always fun. because those fans hate each other so much.
I don't even really know why.
I don't think GWS West North will be a good. I think that could be a horrible bloodbath.
Could be like a 200-point win in round.
And Fremantle Brisbane will be interesting to see how angry Brisbane come out after last week. I think that's the biggest fascination in that game.
And I think that it'll be interesting to see how Freo's new midfield runs.
Yeah, that's true.
Young and Fife
is
straight
Fife
back
going
in.
to be in there properly? Is I want to see Young in there. He looked in pre-season fantastic. At the end of last year, he looked so good. But also it robs the backline of almost their best player in the backline last year as a running back.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if they can come over the fact that they were very one-paced. That was their biggest problem last year.
And they lost their number one X factor up forward.
Yeah, they looked very slow down back. That was such a huge problem for them. Which comes from the year before where they looked really good, but that was teams just figured out how to get through that wall.
Yeah.
And that was it. Once teams figured out to go over that, I think what we talked about at Port and Adelaide played them like week by week early in the year, and every team kind of watched that blueprint and went, oh, just straight over the top, and then they couldn't do anything about it, and the season was pretty much over.
No, and hopefully Justin Longmuir has accounted for that. If he hasn't, he's done.
Yeah.
This will be his last season.
Yeah, I think that's it. If he misses finals by as much as last year again, they can't feasibly...
Their bottom six, he's gone.
Yeah, they can't hold on to that. It's the same as, obviously, I think Simpson's actually in his last year now.
Yes, I think this is his last year.
We discussed last year about how with their soft cap, they just couldn't, they just didn't have any money in the soft cap to sack him.
Hypothetically, let's say West Coast make 8th.
Yeah.
What, do they keep him?
It's tough, isn't it? You can't. Well, would he want to stay?
Probably not.
Like, surely he just goes on to assistant coach somewhere for a bit and maybe has another go in a few years.
Maybe not even assistant coach, maybe like that head of coaching role. That's
yeah,
really
like
popular.
like Bolton's done.
He's got the experience. He's a premiership coach. He's been at multiple clubs.
Yeah.
Like that's a
maybe
really
go to
good role for
Hawthorn
him.
with Mitchell, and obviously he was at Hawthorn before anyway, or back to North.
Well, that's probably the right choice. But would Alistair Clarkson want him there? He and Ross Lyon have the two biggest cabals in footy,
and also
they run their club the way they want.
Simo's very much a pal of Sam Mitchell, and Alistair Clarkson is very much not a pal of Sam Mitchell. So it would be interesting. I think he'd be an asset at whatever club he goes to. He's obviously an experienced head.
They'd be fighting for him.
A great captain, and when West Coast had the talent on the list, he was a great coach. Like that, the way they developed a system to go through Richmond's system was awesome. And unfortunately, just no other team could replicate it after that, and it ended up with teams playing boring stop-start football to try and get through it.
Yep.
But unless you've got Elliot Yeo and Shuey and Sheed playing that style of football, because somehow they managed to do it while cutting lines, and Nat Nui's just
Yeah, if only they could still do that.
Without ripping a quad in half. All right, do you have any other predictions for us? Because I don't.
Predictions, is there anything else to predict?
It's not really, is there?
Surprise All-Australian. Someone who hasn't been All-Australian who you think could be.
I would have said Kitty Coleman, but
No, not anymore.
Rip.
will
Surprise
go
All-Australian.
Wanganeen Millerer.
Graham Myers.
He won't get in.
No, he won't.
He kick 15 goals but have 86 assists.
It doesn't matter how many assists he has. No, if we're going more serious, I think that Lockie Schultz at Collingwood with the lights on him.
Yep.
Obviously, he didn't have a great game the other night, but that's a different scenario. It's tough.
I'm trying to think of key defenders who've missed out. Wiedering's missing a chunk of the season, so that's probably not going to happen.
Sam Collins had his chance a couple of years ago. He wasn't going to get in that year.
I mean, he's had one good game to start.
He has.
If they win games, he could be a shot. But
Ballard has to be the one.
Ballard's the one, right?
But I mean, that wouldn't be a surprise All-Australian, would it? Like, he's been good for
but
X amount of years.
When you've got his contemporaries,
the ultimate
Sicily
surprise
and
All-Australian would be Asava Radagalia at Port.
I vomited a little bit in my mouth thinking about that.
I saw a few posts online of people being like, Sav not shit in the preseason? Not shit? Quite good? I was like, yeah, but he was not shit quite good for Geelong's preseason last year too.
It's one of the most... That's not that I'm wishing defenders to do poorly, but...
Port's backline.
Port's backline is the biggest mystery for me for this year.
It's so chaos ball.
Yeah.
Like, they're all three of them are great or terrible on their day.
Yeah.
Aaliyah, higher ceiling, but just as low a floor as the others. They're all just ability to be completely unaccountable, to mind wander, to have turnovers in the back line.
Zerk Thatcher loses most of the wrestles he's in.
Yeah,
that's what he's
clearly
there
not
for.
strong enough. So, like, one of them's got to play the lockdown role, or two of them, really.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see when they come up against like a Hawkins and a Cameron.
Yeah, so like a Geelong or a Carlton or even the Bulldogs now, if you've got Norton
Yep.
and Hugo Hagen up forward,
Yeah.
I feel like they might fall apart under the pressure like that again. That was their biggest problem last year. And another problem they had last year was when their midfield got beaten.
Adelaide.
They really
That'll-
dropped their heads. Adelaide's another one. Well, Phil Thorpe's injured, isn't he?
Yeah, but they've still got
Tex and Fogarty, who are both big boys,
Yeah.
which is the problem when you come
Yeah.
up against the Zerk Thatcher. So
the Zerk Thatcher.
the Zerk Thatcher.
The Zerk.
The Zerk. That must be a sad one for Essendon fans. Like, I know he was much loved.
I
by
don't
fans.
hate Brendan Zerk Thatcher. I think he has his upsides, but I don't think he can confidently be number one.
No.
Which of those three he has to be?
I can't. I think he was coached poorly a lot. We talked about that game where
No
Hawkins
comment.
had 6 to half time, and they just hadn't put Ridley on him for some reason.
Fun.
That's a huge injury loss for Essendon as well. That's a big dent in their season, and why Hawthorn could get a hold of him.
Kane Cornes thinks otherwise.
Yeah, not even in their most important players.
I feel like this is the year that you get a death threat or a cease and desist or both from Kane Cornes. You need to chill out.
I'd never responded to him before because I'm always like, stupid. But I just thought, like, I was trying to be sensible. 3-year extension is not a big deal for who I would say is arguably their most important player. Maybe Merritt's there.
Merit is.
Ridley holds their backline together. Is their vice captain, would probably be their next captain if Merritt hands it over before he retires at the end of his career.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a huge... And him getting injured does not...
I just think about the young up-and-coming players. I don't know if I see Perkins or Hobbs or Sardis or Nick Cox. We haven't even seen Reed play.
Yeah.
I don't see any of them being the future captain at this point.
No. So, like, I think Ridley, you want to lock him in. You don't want those players leaving because clubs would poach him if he was out of contract.
Is Merritt their captain or is McGrath their captain? I think McGrath's their captain.
That's a great question. I'm not sure.
Essendon's an enigma.
But, like, he's a player that clubs would poach with big money.
Ridley?
Yeah.
Oh, I could definitely see him walking down to Geelong.
Like, Port would love Ridley. Like,
If they could do a straight
And-
swap for Zerk Thatcher, they would.
I saw someone else point out, they were like, well, realistically, doing a 6-week quad on a 6-year contract is a much lower percentage than a 6-week quad on a 4-year contract. So that's money's worth. It's a worry that it was the same quad he did last year.
Yeah.
But, like, just doing one injury twice isn't like an injury-prone player. Ridley's been very reliable for them for 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah, and it's not like old man injuries.
No. And
So-
he's only, what, 25? 24?
I think he's older than that.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not Googling it,
yeah,
but
that's fine. Yeah, no, I don't see it as a massive dilemma. All right, so we've done game of the round. We chose too many games of the round, but Collingwood, Sydney, consensus?
I think that's the winner. Gold Coast, Adelaide is second.
Yeah.
Jordan Ridley's 25.
25, yeah.
Nailed
That's
it.
quite- yeah, quite young.
Yeah,
That's-
3-year deal.
I only know this because I was looking it up when Kane
What?
Cornes was telling me I was
He
stupid.
probably could have got a 5-year deal easily.
Well, it's 5 years total because he had 2 years to run.
Oh,
That's fine, right? It's not like a 10-year...
take him to his 30. If he's injury prone
Yeah.
and he's got no quads by then.
Whoop-de-doo.
See ya.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we saw players get
No,
10
they
years.
didn't even do that to Dyson Heppel,
We've
so
seen
he'll
players
be
get
around till
10-year
he's
contracts.
36.
Like, oh, yeah, that's a...
Yeah, contracts are getting ridiculous, and it's
They are.
all with the threat of free agency and also a new team
Yeah.
coming in. I think you'll see
Once Tasmania's in.
very sneakily a lot of teams will long-term sign young players.
And I
Because
think-
that's what...
The Tasmania one isn't just a threat of losing your players. It's also being able to demand better picks from Tasmania for your players when they're coming in. Like, if you've got a player signed to a 5-year deal and Tassie wants them, then
Yeah.
you've got to give them a top 10 pick. You can't just give them a regular pick because they've got 1 year left going.
Yeah.
So teams are smart. And, like, the AFL will try and legislate ways to stop
They will.
teams
They
from
will
doing
probably
stuff.
do the same thing with, like, you can poach one player from each club.
Yeah.
No penalty, like no compensation. The
Yeah.
question is that only for out of contract players?
Yeah, like, it has to be. You can't just
Yeah.
end contracts.
Yeah.
That's-
So
I'd love to see, like, 8 clubs suing the AFL because they just gifted players to Tasmania.
really funny. But they'll learn from the GWS model, and they will not do what Gold Coast did and pick old players. They will pick people from 20 to 24 who can be leaders of the club.
Yep.
You want to pick a Phil Davis, or
In fairness, even with their old players, Heath Shaw was
Heath
a great
Shaw
pickup.
was good, but that was an outlier.
Yeah.
The other players they picked
Mumford
up.
Mumford was a good one.
I don't think he was an initial one though.
No, he came up. He was at Sydney first.
Yeah, so the ones that they picked up that
Buddy
were
was
older
oh, wait, hang on.
were stopgaps. So like they grabbed
Yeah.
Brett Thornton just to be
Yep.
teaching them in the VFL, well, whatever it was there, NEFL.
I mean, we've seen that model work as well with premiership clubs recently. Like all of Richmond, Geelong, Port Adelaide have picked up weird bit players to fill... Port
Adelaide
Adelaide, Collingwood, sorry.
Port Adelaide
Geelong,
didn't win
Richmond,
nothing.
Collingwood have picked up weird bit players to fill
Yeah.
those gaps, and they've worked.
Last year we went on record at the start of the year saying that Collingwood's pickups were not going to work, and they did.
And they did.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we went Bobby Hill.
Yeah, Bobby Hill and Dan McStay were two of the more important pickups they had.
Bobby Hill's a Norm Smith medalist now.
Yeah.
So-
and I would have been outraged if he didn't win it.
Yeah.
Isaac Smith was a weird pickup for Geelong, and they would
And he
probably
is a
not have
Norm
made that
Smith
grand
medalist.
final without... Yeah, it's a Norm Smith. So that's the secret. Pick up a future... just identify.
It's a shame that Dusty won all three.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's almost like Basher Hooley deserved the first one.
Yeah, but he wasn't a weird pickup. He was...
No, he wasn't. He was a pick for need. I got nothing to talk about. We've had 1 week of footy.
The only thing else I've gotten written down, I moved it right to the bottom, is Mason Cox dead shit. But I
Oh
think
my
that's all we
goodness.
need to say on that.
I want to know, like, what is...
Did you read his apology?
What is a please explain?
Did you read the apology?
No, I didn't.
So he said that...
I blocked him.
He No, it was on the AFL website. He asked that the umpire do one more ball up for him to do, but he was over time. So it was GWS's time in the middle. He asked for one more ball up, and instead of seeing the ball and going, I shouldn't jump for that,
pushed
he
two-
went, I'm going to jump for it, and pushed straight into Shane Mumford of all people.
I know. But also pushed a GWS midfielder out of the way in
Yeah.
the process.
It's very clear to me that Mason Cox is not a see ball, get ball player. We can tell by his 5 disposals and 1 mark on the weekend.
0 at half time.
That he could have stopped at any time, like he does in game to miss balls. It was dead shit. Whoever is their head of like player media or whatever has come out and said none of this shit from Mason Cox. So
Well,
I think
I
he
also-
might be a little less wordy this season.
A big part of it is GWS did such a great job of riling him up.
Yeah.
They've done a great job, you said it the other day, of just picking a fight with the biggest club in Australia on the internet.
Yep.
Because it's worked. It's sparked a
It
rivalry.
endears
It's
them.
got people on side. It's also been not too far. It's all just been
Fun.
quite funny. The petting zoo was such a masterstroke. Like the
great.
small amount of money it would have cost to get like a local cuddly farm group
And
to come
it's
in.
investing in their community.
Yeah, like it's just all really well done. I think a lot of teams will try and take note and fail.
Yeah.
I think you see a lot of stuff like that where a team will be like, oh, okay, so that works. And they'll pick someone who is not.
Someone like a Port Adelaide will go too far.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I think Mason Cox is a premiership player. I would not speak. Maybe Jordan De Goey, but besides Jordan De Goey from that team, 20 of those players I'm happy with having a premiership medal and have no issue with them existing and saying, well, I'm a premiership player. Mason Cox, I feel like the entirety of the AFL outside of Collingwood treats him with disdain. You see it on field. Anytime a player interacts with him,
That was
regardless of height.
6 minutes into the game, I said I wouldn't be Mason Cox and Brandon Maynard causing shit, would it? Like it wouldn't
Maynard,
be.
I forgot about
Maynard's
Maynard.
one.
So take it down
yeah.
to 19 players.
It was 23 on the list, so 20's fine.
Oh yeah, sorry, sub 20.
Yeah. So those three, and like I was saying a few years ago, this is before all the De Goey stuff happened, when he was just a bit of an idiot teenager.
Yeah.
And before they had Mason Cox, I was saying it was becoming really problematic for me because I really liked almost all of Collingwood's players, and I was like, I don't like being in a world where they're just a bunch of likable dudes. So it's almost a good thing.
And then you've got the Dacos hype.
Yeah, and that's not their fault.
That's not their fault, but it doesn't help.
They both seem like really nice
If you
blokes,
watch a
especially
Collingwood
Josh
game
Dacos.
and they're nowhere near the ball, and BT just goes, "Oh, where's Dacos? I'm out. Stop that."
Oh, I mean, BT highlights on the weekend were aplenty. Unfortunately, because we got to hear a lot of his commentary. Nothing for me beat ball smashing into goalpost. BT, he's kicked a goal, has he? He's celebrating like it's a goal. Goal review. Oh, it's hit the post, has it? Sees the review. BT says, how did he not see that hit the post? Good stuff all round.
I don't even think BT watches the game.
He certainly
doesn't know which players
what
which.
he does. Joel Selwood was bland. I don't know if he was bad, but he was bland.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
Selwood and Hodge was like a dry cracker.
And it was between those two and Brayshaw. I think they said the word enormous more than I've ever heard in my life.
Brayshaw gets on my nerves, something chronic.
Joel Selwood said, Patrick Cripps is a real captain now. I'm like, when was he not? He's been carrying the club for years.
Joel's been so internally Geelong focused for so long. You right there, buddy? Featuring cat crinkles. He also said soft drop a lot.
No, I don't like soft drop.
And I was like, I've heard it like once or twice last year. I think Selwood said it 4 or 5 times in that game.
Must be something they used internally at Geelong.
I wonder if it's maybe just like a
Maybe it's a medium term.
medium term.
It's a good joke for
AFL's
someone who knows what I'm talking about.
outlawed it. No more medium term, no more short term. You have to give the weeks. So that means teams are just going to go 5 to 10 weeks. Like it's not going to... There's still no incentive to tell the truth. Like you can just give a week's number.
Yeah, but just give that.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I would rather see 5 to 10 and go, it could be 10 weeks rather than see medium term and it could be the whole season.
I don't know what medium term means.
Geelong didn't know what medium term means.
They had no idea.
Anyway, that's my rant. I was so mad about that last season. I'm glad it's outlawed.
My one Geelong thing is, feels really nice seeing Stephen King in Geelong colours again. There's something about like my childhood seeing, like obviously a lot older now, but like growing up he was Geelong's captain when I first really started paying attention to football. And then got traded obviously to St Kilda and was very good there. But it's just nice back in the colours.
Unfortunately, my one with that is Jordan Russell and Greg Williams, and I have mixed feelings about both of those. Sorry.
Was there someone saying, what is Sydney Hall of Famer Greg Williams doing in the Carlton rooms the other night? That made me laugh. That was a good...
You need to calm down on Twitter. You're going too hard.
I get so bored.
And that's why we have a podcast.
Hey, anyway, thanks for tuning in. You can find votes and points and all other things related to us, including our Twitter and our Ko-Fi and all of our podcasts on thebackpocketau.com, or just look for The Back Pocket on Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get it.
We're also on Yelp, so please leave us a review when you're hungry.
All right, yeah, we make cold pies.
Cold pies.
Thanks for listening. We will be back next week.